I'm back again talking about the state of the modern metagame. It feels like we can't catch a break in 2024 because there have been a lot of recent developments, and I think a lot of you are going to be groaning in the comments. A lot of you might be raising your pitchforks in the comments. So let's walk through it. I think you might have an idea of what I want to talk about based on the title and the thumbnail of this video. Let's take a look at starting at the modern metagame as of right now. Now, you'll notice at the top right hand corner, I'm cheating a little bit. 7 days. I got to take the recent modern metagame, right? A lot of things to take into account, such as the holidays, people being away. And I mean, there was a recent super qualifier, but in terms of modern, 14% of the recent modern metagame was Rakdos scam. Okay. Now, I'm going to cherry pick even further. I'm going to use the Wayback Machine to go to December 1st's modern metagame, where 21% of the metagame was Rakdos scam. Now, let's take a flip between those two. Rakdos scam, Footfalls, Murktide, Tron, Scales. Rakdos Footfalls, Scam, Tron, Scales, Murktide region. Scales is like somewhere here. Where is it? Yeah, Scales down here. Titan Yawgmoth. Things haven't really changed. Did the BNR do absolutely nothing? Was I wrong? Was I a part of the cabal of modern that was pushing the wrong agenda? Do I have to admit defeat and realize Fury was not the correct ban? Let's talk about it. I want to go through the kind of details that I have, talk about some of my own opinions here, and maybe we can agree or disagree at the end of the video. Now, firstly, looking at the top decks in the archetypes right now, Tron is, of course, and even Amulet, just linear strategies. Maybe I shouldn't say that about Amulet necessarily, but straightforward strategies that have a very strong plan that cheat you out of a lot of things. Now, Tron gets the one ring to boost itself through. Karn the Great Creator is really good, especially if decks like Hardened Scales are going to be good at the top of the metagame as well. But regardless, decks like this are going to be really powerful because they're not as susceptible to discard. You can just kind of top deck the lands and kind of bumble your way through a win there. You even have the blue decks, such as Murktide region, going off the power of expressive iteration. There's a lot of powerful threats in the deck, and the deck does need to relatively draw really well. It's actually a very hard deck to pilot. Honestly, it doesn't just get free wins all the time. And when it draws well, it draws well. And then finally, the Cascade decks just getting free wins for a very long time at this point, because honestly, putting out 2/4/4 Rhinos or just your whole graveyard onto the battlefield is really powerful. The living end decks have a bit of a harder matchup. Dauthi Voidwalker being main boardable is really unfortunate, but the Rhinos deck has so much mid-range power, so much mid-game, so much interaction that it's really just putting out 2/4/4s. The rest of the deck is built really, really well outside of that and can deal with the kind of scam matchup, but regardless, it's still at the top of the modern metagame. So what's really going on? Let's go back in time. Let's talk about the December 4th banned and restricted announcement where Fury was banned and Up the Beanstalk was banned. Now we see the changes come from the Up the Beanstalk ban. We see the 4-color decks relatively be shoved down. Not a lot of value to be had from what was going on before, and especially with Fury gone, that deck struggles to interact in a lot of ways. Solitude isn't the best option in all scenarios, and it doesn't answer everything, which is good. We managed to knock out one big bad of the format, although Ren and 6 decks are still all over the format in many ways, and they may honestly make a big comeback. But Fury in Scam, did the Fury ban work? I mean, why did they want to remove Fury? Removing Fury will impact both the play rate and win rate of Rakdos Evoke. Players are currently using 4 or more copies of Undying effects like Not Dead After All to rebuy Grief or Fury. Without Fury, the opportunity cost of playing so many Undying effects increases, reducing consistency in the deck and becoming a real cost to include. It is possible these decks begin to transform into white versions that utilize Solitude or Ephemerate, which, by the way, we did see a little bit of. However, a rebought Solitude is not as threatening as a 4/4 with Double Strike and provides deck less coverage against the metagame. We believe the removal of Fury will widen the format, allowing players to explore additional strategies, especially low toughness creatures. Finally, fewer overall Rakdos Evoke decks in the metagame will also reduce the total number of Grief and Orcish Bowmasters players will encounter overall. Did that happen? Did that have some of that? Again, the Solitude, we have seen the Orzhov Griefless come out with Ephemerate, bouncing a bunch of creatures, and some of them are playing a Stoneforge package as well. So a lot of these decks do have value, but they can struggle against the blue decks that counter key effects and move through them that way, right? Like if you can just remove key parts of what the deck is trying to do, the scam doesn't win overall. So Orzhov does have a really bad time, and they're mentioning other things like Orcish Bowmasters and stuff. Are we seeing a lower representation of those? Well, the Fury ban did solve something. Okay, so there are overall less creatures being removed in the modern metagame, but right now is the problem that creatures are being removed off the battlefield, more so the cards that you need to win the game are being removed from your hand. We don't see the comeback of something like Taxes. Thalia, Garden of Thraben was notably one of the bigger creatures that, players like Pleasant Kenobi were talking about bringing back, and how cards like that are holding a card like this back. But Fury hasn't brought back Taxes. Unfortunately, Taxes is still just not a great deck in the modern metagame at all, in any way, shape, or form, really, because it's not taxing much if your creatures are your threats as well. This is a deck that hits non-creature spells, it hits your lands. Unfortunately, the removal and interaction in this format is free, doesn't require lands in a lot of cases, and they're all creatures, so non-creatures aren't affected by this as well. And the creatures themselves are just so resilient with Undying and so many ways to just come back or have immediate effects, such as Ragvan being able to be dashed in, that it's really hard for removal to really work. So you need to hit cards at the source, aka when they are in your hand, which is why Grief is still a powerful effect. Thought seizing your opponent, taking cards out of your opponent's hand before they can even play them, before they get the value out of them, is still really important in today's modern metagame, which is why Grief, unfortunately, is probably still a really awful play pattern for modern and likely needs to be banned. Let's just get it out there. Let's say it. Grief probably needs to go. And honestly, Fury probably wasn't enough. I think Fury was a good step forward. I will say that. I still stand by the fact that Fury should have been banned out of both. But I don't know if it should have just been Fury. I think the Grief also should have gone. I think this was a net negative card for the modern metagame. Fury was as well. But it's hard to understand that, like, Wizards won't ban the whole elemental cycle. It's part of the big selling reason of Modern Horizons 2 packs to this day. People will open those packs, they'll try and get those chase rare cards, chase mythics, and they will succeed with these cards. Endurance is still a thing as well, holding back graveyard decks. There's a reason to stop every single elemental that has been printed. Solitude holding back Death Shadow decks, Endurance holding back mill and all graveyard strategies, Grief just stopping the whole format, Fury stopping all creature decks, and then honestly, like the blue one just kind of doing not too bad things either. It's actually like Subtlety is actually not a bad card either, but it's probably the safest out of all of them, truly, at this point. It was rated the second worst for probably a while, and it probably still is, but like it's fine as a card too, so that one can say. Regardless though, the scam decks still are templated a lot in the same way. They're still playing a lot of the same engines and powerful cards that are stopping a lot of the modern metagame. They're still playing Orcish Bowmasters. We do not see any less of this card. This card is probably the card of the year in Magic the Gathering when it comes to constructed Magic. The One Ring is probably card of the year in terms of Magic in general. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. In terms of a card to represent all of Magic for the year, is it the One Ring or Orcish Bowmasters? I'm saying the One Ring for Magic's recognizability. I've had a lot of family friends and outside folks talking about Magic with me because of the One Ring, but Orcish Bowmasters is probably the most format warping card in Modern and Arena and Legacy and everything. Everywhere where it's legal, Orcish Bowmasters is an insane Magic card. Shieldred the Apocalypse, Bane of Standard, and honestly just a really solid card in any format that wants to punish One Ring draws. Shieldred is an insane Magic card as well at the top end of the Grief decks as well. And then finally, Fable of the Mirror Breaker being an insane Magic card on the far side with the fixed Kiki, especially in combination with Dauthi Voidwalker. Oh wow, just being able to choose exiled cards that are already there, using your opponent's cards almost like infinitely every turn, one activation after another, thanks to the fixed Kiki on the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. But Dauthi Voidwalker just doing so much, being a main board piece of graveyard hate that is relatively unblockable, has a really good effect if you're able to get it off on the activation, sometimes game winning, really. Just an insane Magic card for all the Grief decks. And what I wanted to showcase here is I'm actually going to hide my webcam. I love my little Excel sheets, but what I did was I took the last couple of decks, right? Like last couple of events over the past week, and I went through their percentages. So you'll see the event, you'll see kind of the name of the event, and it's kind of going in backwards order here. The total number of scam being represented in that, and then as well the total number of decks being registered. So we see kind of the January 2nd prelim, there was 5 scam decks out of 17. In the December 31st challenge, there was 10 scam decks out of 135. But in terms of the total metagame percentage, out of the last couple of days, this kind of tracks 14% of the metagame is scam. 99 decks out of total 673 registered out of these events. Scam won all 3 of these challenges. All 3 of these challenges were won by scam. Let that sink in. Scam is still good enough to be stealing games even at such a low conversion rate. Obviously, pilot skill, luck has a lot to do with all of this. Obviously, at this point, I want to account it more to pilot skill. I do want to give those players a big congratulations for winning the challenge. That's still a very difficult feat, regardless of the deck that you're playing. But it does not beat the fact that ultimately scam is everywhere, and I'm not sure if the BNR actually worked. And that's where I want to lead this question to you. Do you think the banned and restricted announcement worked? Do you think Modern is in a better place? And do you think we should have just banned Grief all along? I want to hear your comments in the comment section down below. I think this is going to be an ongoing trend or an emerging topic that we all have to discuss moving forward. And I'd really like to know what people think. I know a lot of folks have a lot of, I guess, passionate opinions about this topic. So I'd love to hear it down below. Let's discuss. Let's go back and forth. Should Grief be banned in Modern?